Hello and welcome to another Sonic Lab, where today we're looking at the Zoom H6 recorder, which is the latest in their ever-expanding family of portable audio recorders. Now in this review I'm not going to be focusing on the sound itself. I might have a few audio clips, but it's primarily just a quick look at the features and a comparison between the features of this and the previous models. First up, let's have a look at the physical size. So here's the H6. Now if I just swap that out for the previous H4n, you can get some idea that it's quite a bit chunkier. This is the H2n, and here's the diminutive baby of the family, the H1. So what do you get for the extra mass? And it is quite a bit heavier. If we look at them side by side, you can see immediately that the capsules on the H6 are significantly bigger than the H4. Zoom say they're 14.6mm capsules on the new H6, which makes them the biggest around in such a recorder, according to them, and I've no reason to doubt that. Like the H4n, you can rotate the capsule from 90 degrees to 120 degrees pickup pattern. Same with this one. But the big news in this is you can actually change the capsules. So you just detach the whole unit and you can swap it out. So at this point it's probably best to go through what else you get in the box, and it's a nice box too. It's a lot bigger than the one you get with the H4n, and that's because there's a lot more in it. For example, you do get another second capsule. This is the MS, or middle side capsule. As the name suggests, it's got a front firing capsule which captures the mono information, and a side firing capsule which gives you the spatial information, and you can choose either when you're recording, when you set up the recording, or in post how wide that stereo image is. Also in the box you get sets of batteries, USB cable and a windshield. There are other capsules available. If you go to the website you can get some details of them. There's a short shotgun microphone, which is probably handy if you're doing a spot sound recording, or maybe if you're an ENG situation and you're not behind a camera but you're trying to record someone's voice for an interview, for example. And there's another input module which gives you 2 extra combo jacks, and that's XLR and jack inputs. It doesn't provide phantom power, but the 4 inputs on the unit do. So let's have a closer look at the unit itself. So first I'm going to refit the XY capsule on there. It looks a bit naked without. Now one other thing that comes in the box I forgot to mention is the SD card. It comes as a micro SD card with an adapter, and it's a 2 gig card. So let's fit that one in there first, which introduces the SD slot on the side. Now next to it is headphones. We've got the volume, plus and minus, and the hold and power button. On the front of the unit here we've got, you can just see that there, line out, and a connection for remote. On the other side we've got a USB connection, menu switch, and the jog wheel on the side with the center press, just like the H4n. Moving up, we've got 2 of the combo inputs, 2 on the other side, and underneath the unit you've got a tripod mounting bush and the battery door. It takes 4 AA's. You can see the monitor speaker there as well. At the top of the unit is the capsule release button. There's one either side, and just below that there's a line and mic input. Now that input is only on the XY capsule, it's not on the MS capsule. Now one thing I like about the H6 is the number of controls on the unit itself. You don't have to dig around in menus trying to find level controls. They're right there. You can grab them and turn them. Now you've got a level control for each capsule at the top here, and each channel has got its own separate volume control. Now they're slightly shielded here in case you're worried about knocking them. And each channel too has got its own separate pad switch. So if I switch it on, actually I'll do it to this camera so you can see the boot up time. So here's switching on. And that's pretty swift. It's a lot faster than the H4n, which is one of the bugbears about the unit. I must admit a lot of people have been complaining about how long it took to get the H4n booted up and recording. So first thing you notice is there's a lot more information on the display than there was for the H4n and previous models. And it's in colour too. It's a lovely looking display, nice and crisp. One thing you might find is that if it's in direct sunlight outside, you might struggle to see it. It's not quite as good at sunlight and bright lights as it is with the H4n. But I think that might be a small price to pay for, quite honestly, a lovely display. So looking at that display, at the moment it's in a slightly dimmed state. It's a power saving device. If you hit any of the buttons it goes back to its full brightness. You can see there's a lot of information displayed on a very small screen, but it's quite clear. You've got the recording format, what the phantom power level is set at. You can have it plus 12, 24 or 48 volts is indicating we've got 48 volts here. You've got a remaining record time, which is quite good actually. It calculates how much record time you've got left on the card depending on how many channels you've got going into record. I'll show you that, and at the same time show you how you arm it for recording. It's very easy. There's all these buttons on the front which give you direct access into that. So if I hit left and right, which is recording from the top mics, they're ganged as stereo, so you only get to switch them both on as a pair. That's not the case with the individual channels. You can have them separately or together if they're set up to be ganged together. That's reflected on the display down here. 3 and 4 are a stereo channel, 1 and 2 are separate. The way you change that is if you press and hold both buttons at the same time. So if I do that with 4, 3 and 4, they're now separate individual channels. And by the same token, I can press and hold 1 and 2, let go, and they become ganged. It's a very handy feature. It's very easy to get around and set it up for either individual channels or stereo. I like that a lot. So now we've got them set up as channels there. It's easy just to arm them like that. And if I look at the remaining time display, if I unselect for recording certain channels, you can see the record time goes up. You can also see which channels are armed for recording by their indicator goes red here. As well as the level indication here, you've got tiny little displays for level and for pan, and this is for the internal mixing system. There's also tiny little indicators here for phantom power. The little lightning bolt means this phantom power is enabled for this channel. There's an indication you've got compressor on, and another little window for a bass roll-off. So there's a lot of information displayed in quite a small area, but it's well defined, it's precise, it's clear. I think they've done a lot of work on the ergonomics and how to present that information, and for me it works. Back to the top surface, it's a one press record button, not a 2-press one like it was with the H4n, which occasionally used to catch people out. It certainly did me. And it's again press to stop recording. Playback, you get an indicator, pause, and you get an indication here as well for pause, stop, record. It's very clear and precise. I like it. The menu system is very familiar. For those who've used Zoom products before, I'm sure you'll find your way around pretty quickly. There's a whole slew of stuff in there, some of which you might never use. Some of it is pretty useful. For example, it acts as an audio interface over a USB, and it can interface with PCs, Mac, and now iPad, although you just get the stereo mix down on iPad. For musicians, there's a tuner, there's a metronome. On playback, you can slow things down without changing the pitch, and vice versa. You can change the pitch without slowing things down. You can multi-track. You can set up lots and lots of tracks and then bounce them down within the unit. You can split tracks. You can do all sorts of things. It really is quite comprehensive. Now, looking more at the recording side of things, a useful feature is the low cut, which you can assign individually to tracks. And when you do, you get a choice of frequency too, from 80 Hertz up to 237. Now, one big question mark over this unit is battery power. What's the battery life like? I'm sure I'm not alone in having problems with the H4n regarding that. If you ever use phantom power on the H4n with regular batteries, you know that they got eaten like crazy. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and the whole thing was dead. Now, another big problem with that is if the batteries go flat whilst you're recording, it doesn't record anything. Those files get wiped. So that's one thing I really did want to test on this one. Now, out the trap, it's going to be better because you've got 4 batteries in there rather than 2. And sure enough, I did a test. I got some old, pretty exhausted batteries. I put them in here, and I wanted to try and find out what happened when it ran out of power. Was the recording stopped? Even with those dead batteries, it lasted for over an hour and a half. So the battery life certainly is significantly better than it used to be. And that was with phantom power. And I'm happy to report that the files still did get written. Even when I exhausted the batteries, it went completely dead, checked the files, and they were still there. So that's a big, big plus. Well done on increasing battery life and fixing that problem with the corrupted or disappearing files if the batteries did run out. Now, I've been going on about the H4n in an H6 review quite a lot. The reason is it became something of a classic, especially for those using DSLRs for filming, because the audio in those cameras, it sucks to be honest. Now, if you are using it for that purpose, you'll be appreciative of this, a line output. It's totally separate from the headphone out, which means that you can monitor what's going on in here, change the levels of monitoring. It's not going to affect the output of this. Now, the downside is it is a line output, which is going to be too hot to go directly into the microphone input of your DSLR. So you're going to have to pad it down some way, but that's a small thing. I think you can tell I'm struggling to find fault with this. Okay, one tiny one. Audio bracketing. Some audio recorders, like the Sony PCM D50, is it? They record effectively two channels, two tracks at the same time. One at a set level, the other one maybe 10, 20 dB below that. The idea being that if your peaks blow out on the top one, then you've got the second track recorded at a lower volume just to save your peaks. You can do that on this. It has got audio bracketing on the left and right channels. It hasn't got them on all the rest of the four inputs. So there's one tiny downside, but hey, really, I am struggling to find fault with it. I have to say, they've come up with a bit of a winner. Now, the observant amongst you, and quite frankly, those still awake, because I have been going on for quite a long time, I've noticed I haven't actually talked about the sound, which is a bit remiss since I've got almost to the end of the review. What I'm going to do is I'll record some examples with this, the H2, the H4n, even the H1, and so you can compare in different situations. Now that's going to take a bit of time. I'm going to do that at a separate juncture and I'll present it as a separate video. In general, and in brief, the H4n was criticised for having slightly noisy mic amps. I think they've been working on it. This one does sound better in that respect. Thanks for bearing with me. I hope this has been useful. See you in the next one.